So how did you know that you were an addict? When did you first take your drug of choice and think, I can't stop?
It's interesting. I can remember exactly where I was. That for each occasion I first took my first smoke of dope, my first hit of amphetamine, my first hit of smack, I can remember exactly where I was. Absolutely in minute detail. Who was there, what was going on. Cannot tell you the first time I ate spaghetti bolognese and where that was, but I can tell you exactly where I was for those particular occasions. And each time I took a drug, because I started with smoking dope, just happened to be the most available. I don't believe it to be a gateway drug or anything, it just happened to be the one that was most available. I was not happy with myself in any way at all. I had this, I suppose, this great emptiness within me. And what I found was that by taking a drug, it filled that up and it kind of made it feel complete. And I'm the sort of person who, having discovered that you can take a substance and make yourself feel better, I thought, well, I don't want to just do this on Tuesdays. I want to do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and from dawn till dusk. I was very, very shy, crippled with shyness. I was very didn't have any direction. And addiction gave me a better, it was better. I'm not saying it gave me super confidence, but it was better. And I was able to cope with people a bit better. And it also gave me a purpose. It gave me a family. Was there a time when I thought I was an addict? Really, I'm not sure that there was. It was definitely a slow decline. And the only analogy I've ever really been able to come up with to sort of indicate what it was like was when you first get married and you walk down the aisle or whatever you do on your wedding day and you have this most beautiful person next to you and it's going to be the happiest time of your life and you feel amazing. And then I don't know how many years later, you wake up one morning and you think, how the hell did I end up with this person?
Chip, they say that every addict has a rock bottom. Can you talk me through your rock bottom and what it looked and felt like?
There were lots of things that I think most people would describe as rock bottoms. Being on a life support machine for 4 days. That would do it. Going to prison for 3 years. That would normally do it. Being homeless for a considerable number of years. That would normally do it. So I was starting to look at how I was interacting with people, and particularly with my daughter, who had a really terrible first 8 years of her life, really, really terrible, with people dying in the house and police raids and, the whole typical, stereotypical, I kind of guess, train spotting junkie lifestyle. Yeah. And then I kind of was starting to evaluate things a bit differently, and I was looking after her one day. We were in this squat. She'd come to tell me that she was hungry, which I think was probably quite difficult for her to do. I'd got hold of some money, gone out, spent all the money on drugs, come back again about 4 or 5 hours later to find her in the house that I'd left unlocked, quite frightened. Well, no, very frightened. And that moment, and I thought, oh no, I've really got to do something.
So you went to rehab, and then did you just go to rehab, get clean and stay clean? Was it that, I say easy?
It was that easy, yeah. It felt easy, funnily enough.
I heard you once describe yourself as being a proper junkie.
Yeah.
And when I went into Focus 12, and when we were coming out of group therapy, we'd always be arguing, and you're not even a proper junkie, you're not even a proper junkie, you're not even an addict, these kind of arguments got thrown around. So what is a proper junkie, in your opinion?
A proper junkie, in my opinion, obviously there are things like injecting and overdosing and using various drugs, which there's that kind of bizarre reverse hierarchy that addicts have, that I've got to be worse than you, so as opposed to alcoholics.
It's an egotistical thing.
Completely.
Isn't it? Everyone's got to be worse.
One person could say, oh yeah, I used to use every day. how much a gram, the next person's using 2 grams, the next person's using 2 grams.
Done 10 and pinned to the wall.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then by the end, you get to the end of the circle, you're fixing up 3 grams behind your eyeball, and before mobile phones, that's a proper junkie. Somebody who had to hand over money and wait 9 hours with no way of contacting the person who was going off and scoring for you. You had to, there was just no way of communicating. You had to get dealers' numbers. You had to kind of know where to go to score.
Yeah.
But you just couldn't access people. To me, that kind of, I feel it must be so easy now. It is.
Yeah.
There's so much more drugs around. And
they're legal highs as well now as well.
It's just like there's a supermarket of drugs out there now. Whereas when I was using, there were sort of glorious moments when the Shah of Iran collapsed, and there was all this Persian heroin being brought into the country. The place was swamped with Persian heroin, and then there'd be that doesn't exist now. There's just so much drugs around, and I think that's easily illustrated by the fact that when I was using, a gram of heroin was about £90. The last time I used was 1984, and now a gram of heroin is about £60. It should, by rights, be about £600 if you look at the proper rate.
Yeah.
So supply and demand just tells you the place is awash with drugs, and there are so many more choices to choose from now. It's so easy to get needles. You couldn't buy syringes. You couldn't buy needles. Nowadays, that sort of stuff is really easy. You have to reuse needles over and over and over again, sharpening them on matchboxes, and kind of, it was. There were only 1,300 registered addicts in the country, so you were one of a very small group of people, really. Society ostracized me because I looked really odd. I looked dirty. I had matted hair. I looked bloodstained trousers.
Yeah.
I looked like crap. I didn't think I did.
But did you think you looked beautiful?
I thought I looked great.
Took your last drug in 1984.
Yeah.
And you qualified as a psychotherapist in 1985.
Yep.
Yeah. Talk me through that process. So you just left rehab and went into education?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I came back to London and started the process of learning my trade.
Yeah.
And that required, college. It required volunteering in an agency. I mean, I have to say I struggled through college. I was learning about theories that I didn't believe in, that I didn't really know. I think I had quite a strong idea. First of all, that I wanted to specialise in substance misuse. That was definitely.
Well, you had done all the field work.
Yeah, exactly. That was definitely what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people with substance misuse problems.
Yeah.
There weren't very many people doing it. It was all very new, very pioneer. I mean, even recovery was new.
Yeah.
Abstinence, junkies being clean was new. So it was all very kind of new and quite pioneering. So I started working hard and learning my trade in the rehab that I'd been in.
Yeah.
And when the time came to start really working, I was given this sort of empty building.
Yep. So you were the manager?
I was the manager of
So
this.
the lunatic was given the keys to the asylum?
He was, yeah.
Wicked.
He was, really quite early on, really. When I think back now, I was...
That's amazing to think, though.
It is. I was 3.5 years clean, 4 years maybe, 4 years clean.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of a 23-bed unit.
Wicked.
We started doing work that even at the early stage of rehabilitation was not being done. We started treating the clients in a completely different way to the way that rehabs had been run before. We had a lot of fun. We interacted with the clients. We would go and have coffee with them. We'd go on trips with them. Which was stuff that was considered so inappropriate. It was like, there's no boundaries. You've got no boundaries at all. You go out and you went to the seaside with the clients and things like that. Stuff that we thought was really great. We created an atmosphere in the house that was really upbeat. We treated people with respect. We treated people with, they're entitled to their opinions, and we
and individuality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and whatever path you want to take, you can take it. And we did things like, it was the AIDS epidemic. It was just starting, so we put
80s.
condoms in the lavatories. Well, we got so much flack for that because other rehabs would ring us up and say, "Why have you put condoms in the lavatories?" And we said, "Well, because we've got 23 men and they're going to have sex and they need to be protected." And the other rehabs would say, but you're not allowed to have relationships in the first year. And we go,
Who says you're not allowed to have relationships in the first year?
I don't know where that rule came from. But
is it written down? Is it a written
not
rule?
written down anywhere.
Okay.
Not written anywhere.
So
Nowhere is it,
rule.
but it's a made-up rule. One of those sort of rehab rules that
Yeah.
gets. So you're not allowed to have a relationship in the first year, whatever, But people did, obviously. People had.
We're human beings and we have feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of rehabs were very negative about that, saying that and I would always say, well, we tell them not to use as well, but sometimes they use and they relapse. You can tell them whatever you like, they're going to still do what they want to do. And if they're going to have sex, it's responsible for us to have it. So that kind of thing we were doing. But most of all, I think it was the way we interacted with the clients, that we did it with them. It was like a journey we were on together.
So where did you go after that?
So I ended up going to Jersey.
Yes.
And there was no rehab, there was nothing there in Jersey. It opened up this little day program. And because Jersey was such a small enclosed community, we suddenly realised that there was no need for a residential. People could go home.
Yeah.
And if they were committed enough and you trusted them, they would come in the next day. And that...
So giving the addicts some responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was that was a real eye-opener. And our retention rate was no different to an enclosed environment. I mean, just because an environment is enclosed, it doesn't say people don't leave, people don't walk out, people don't relapse, they do. And then one day I got a phone call from an ex-client who said, "If I give you 50 grand, would you open up a little therapy centre?" I went, yeah, I'll do that.
Higher power.
Yeah, whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't know what it was, but it was just perfect. And I looked in East Anglia and I saw all these. I thought, there's nothing there. I put this pin in the map and it said Bury St Edmunds. And so I went there and stayed a few days and liked it. Felt like a nice place. And within 3 weeks, I found a small suite of offices. It had a group room. We did a bit of work. It had a group room, a little office, some 2 rooms for individual work, and I opened shop. And there were no clients, so I had this. I opened up, and I thought this money was going to last me forever.
Yeah.
It had practically all gone because I'd moved up there. I had got this premises, furnished it, refurbed it, had no money left, and I was sitting there without a single client.
So who turned up?
And I sat there for about 3 months going, what the hell have you done? What the hell have you done? And then just slowly, the word got out. I was going out and obviously telling people we existed. And just little by little, it started to grow. And I can clearly remember the day I had 3 clients. I got somebody called Davina McCall on board.
Yeah.
And she made a massive difference, not only by her financial injection, but because she gave us credibility. And within a year and a half of her getting involved, we had enough money to put down on a deposit on a building. And
that was the one in Risby.
That was the one in Risbygate Street. I mean, I'd learnt from the previous place that neighbours do not like the idea of addicts moving in next door. So I was really...
It's very prejudiced.
I knew, I mean, and in the halfway house we ran, we'd gone to all this effort to tell the neighbours it was going to be fine, and within the first week somebody had burnt down the garden shed of the next door. We found the perfect building, and we started to build. and it became a really, really beautiful organisation. I really feel incredibly proud of that place. I was able to run it exactly as I wanted to run it, which was with kindness, with love, with respect, so that
it was all about the addict.
What?
Was it all about the addict?
It was all about the addict.
Yeah.
It was like, I want you to walk into this building and feel that you're going to be looked after. One of the reasons Davina got involved was because we said we're going to run this like a charity, which meant that we have free beds. So we always had at least 4 free beds out of the ability to have about 16, 17. So we always had 4 free beds because that's what you're supposed to do. If you're running a charity, you're supposed to behave charitably. Even if we were full, because of the overheads and staffing and things like that, we had to raise 20 grand a month. Now, if you're raising money for children, cancer, in Suffolk, horses, you just put your hand out and people put money in it. If you're raising money for addicts, it's really difficult.
Right, yeah.
And that's why Russell and Davina were just absolutely, completely instrumental. It meant we could do fundraisers in London that could raise, 20, 30 grand a night. But it was hard work. It was really absolutely, completely time consuming. And although the staff didn't know it, there were at least 3 times when, if I didn't find £10,000 within the next 10 minutes, we were going to close down.
Okay.
So it was very stressful. I was exhausted, and I thought, okay, well, I'm old enough now to do private practice. And
you came here.
So I came here to Harley Street, and slowly built up a practice here, and left Focus to do what they were going to do.
But Focus closed 2 weeks ago. That
did.
must have broken your heart. I mean, it broke my heart.
It was, I thought it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
I thought it was a disgrace. I thought...
What was a disgrace?
That it shouldn't... I ran it for the best part of 18 years. Yeah. It did not make money. It was hard work.
Yeah.
But it just
and the staff were committed to their jobs.
Staff were committed to their jobs, you'd got the job done. And I don't think it was managed by people who had the heart.
My first thought when I heard that it closed, there were addicts in there. Addicts who walked in, like I did when I walked into Focus 12, full of hope and like, this is it, this is going to be my second chance at life, And then to be told you've got to go home. I'm going to cry because it's really quite sad.
Yeah.
To get that hope and then to be told, guys, we're closing.
Yeah, I think. I'm pretty sure that that process was managed as well as possible.
Yeah.
But I think what is sad is that a rehab has been taken out of the system that was prepared to give free places that I don't think anywhere else does.
Well, I've worked out that on average 52 people a year went through Focus 12. Over 21 years, that's 1,144 hopeless addicts getting a chance at a new way of life because of your vision.
Yeah.
I mean, you must be incredibly proud of that.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. And
do you go to bed and think, oh, I did that? Someone else has got a better life because I did that. I would be.
Yeah, I always feel a little funny talking about, but until I was 37, I led I was of no use to society whatsoever. And I always feel a little uncomfortable talking about it, but it became important to me that I wanted to leave something decent. I wanted to do something, it's not a legacy, but I wanted to do something decent.
You also an expert witness for the Government Select Committee.
Yeah.
How did you get asked to do that? And
that was through my association with Russell Brand.
Okay.
In that particular instance, I think we kind of slightly wasted the opportunity. I mean, it's quite a golden opportunity, quite a special invitation. I think it is very common that politicians are out of touch, not just with addiction, but with all kinds of things that affect people: poverty, homelessness, living on benefits. Yeah. I don't think any politician has a clue how hard life is for so many people. So the fact that they don't understand addiction, and they probably just think, I think politicians are just typical human beings, and I think most people in this country, and I don't know, maybe worldwide, but in this country, most people think addicts bring it on themselves. It's their own fault.
I listened to your podcast, the one on trauma, and you said that most addicts have had a deep-rooted trauma that's led to them being an addict.
It's certainly been part of their story, yes. There are two things that... one thing that I've met with every single addict I've ever dealt with has been an absent father figure, either emotionally or physically absent. I mean, obviously that's because the mother obviously...
Primary caregiver,
yeah, exactly. So it's much easier. And men do abandon children at the rate of knots without a second thought and get no social approbation for that at all. Whereas if a woman decides that she can't handle responsibility, she is pilloried for being an awful person. So there is a real awful imbalance there about taking responsibility. But I think every addict I've dealt with has had a very poor relationship with their father figure. And I think easily over 80% have had either a significant trauma or particularly some kind of sexual dysfunction, abuse, some kind of sexually inappropriate action. Those would be very common things with all the clients that I've dealt with.
Yeah. I remember when Amy Winehouse died, and I read a couple of comments on Twitter, and a few of them were, "Just say no to drugs, kids."
Yeah.
And that kind of really angered me. It's like, well, people don't start off with a needle in their arm or 2 grams of coke up their nose. It's something's happened to get them there. And what's your opinion on the just say no? It seems to me out of date, but people are still saying it.
Well, it's a completely useless statement.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was that simple, then that's what we'd say. We'd just say no. But it's just as...
And life's not that simple.
And life isn't like that, it's just too simplistic. Just be perfect. Don't show any weakness. It just, to me, seems to be such a kind of condensed, completely thoughtless remark. Just say no. Because the implication is, if you haven't said no, you failed somehow. And it's just a ridiculously simplistic view of looking at the problem. And I think that's one of the things where that just say no thing completely negates that person has had a deeply traumatic life. I mean, most addicts experience really traumatic things. If a normal person, well, that's a slightly strange phrase, got beaten up by 7 Hells Angels, they would be deeply traumatized by that event. That happened to me 3 times.
Okay.
And I think most addicts experience seeing dead people, having friends who die, getting beaten up, being home, things that people would consider traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
I think most addicts experience a lot of those things. And it becomes, it's part of what's been an addict. If you're an addict, you are going to get beaten up every now and then. If you're an addict, you're going to be home, whatever. You're going to have these traumatic events.
If rehabs like Focus 12 are closing down, are we going to see a load of hopeless junkies just wandering the streets, sleeping in sleeping bags, more than we do now?
Many, many more than we do now.
So it's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse, but we're also going to see the normalisation of drugs. We're going to see a pharmaceutical response to any emotional problem, which is already beginning to develop. Yeah. Addiction is that theory taken to its greatest extreme. I will take a drug. I feel bad, so I will take a drug completely inappropriate for the purposes, such as heroin, which is a pain reliever, which is given to people in the last stages of cancer. But I'll take it anyway, and I will feel better. But we are now giving a pill to make feel better from any human emotion. I don't know who I would ask to play in my film, but I am happy with who I am today. I regret many things, and I kind of wish a lot of things hadn't happened, but I'm happy with who I am today. And that feels like a really nice place to be compared to, yeah.
That feels like a nice place to end the interview. I just want to ask you one more question while you're here. Who's your favourite client, Russell or me?
Without any doubt, Russell.